Hello everyone, and welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Genshin Impact. My name is Azuark, and today our goal is to run through some quick tips for getting started. We'll probably do a series of these, starting with ultra basics and getting slightly more sophisticated as we go, so if part 1 is insultingly basic, sorry, but I promise you somebody needs to hear them. Tip number 1, pick up everything. And I mean everything. You'll have a use for it all someday, except maybe pine cones. Genshin Impact is a resource-driven game, and you'll be very sad when you find out 2 of your first 3 characters need hilichurl masks, 2 of their talent books need them, 2 of their weapons need them, and the drop rate kinda stinks. That's just an example, but it does apply to the account you're seeing on footage right now. But even mint and berries, which seem pretty useless at first, have a use in the Serenity pot someday. So do pick up everything, just don't go stupidly far out of your way to do so. Number 2, don't sprint. When you press the dash button, you get a quick burst of speed that consumes some stamina. Alternatively, you can hold the button and run. The problem with this is it eats through your stamina much faster and doesn't help you go any faster. It's better to press the dash button twice per second than to just hold the button down. There are also advanced techniques players use where, as the speed boost is fading, they'll start hopping to try to preserve it a little longer, but we're not going to worry about that. Number 3, swimming and climbing slower saves stamina. So while we're talking about stamina, let's address the other 2 main uses for it. If you run out of stamina while swimming, gliding, or climbing, it can be bad news. And while you can use a plunge attack while you're falling, save it for when you're at least kinda close to the ground, running out of stamina while swimming will result in you drowning. Which isn't the worst thing in the world, by the way, you just respawn at the shore, but it does drain your energy. If you're trying to make it out to, say, the island along the beach where the game starts, don't hold the sprint button and you'll swim much slower. Much slower. Painfully slower. But if you're trying to stretch how far you can go, this can enable you to reach places you wouldn't otherwise. Similarly, while climbing, you can do a jump upward. It's less efficient, but it is obviously a lot faster. On that note, number 4, look up and aim for flat spots to recover. This probably speaks for itself, but when climbing, it's not too terribly often you have just a sheer cliff to climb. And if you do, you'll probably want to find another way up. Genshin absolutely will reward you for climbing tall mountains, and there's enough terrain that you'll want to scale a few cliff walls, not to mention windmills, someday, but there's often a smart way to do it. Number 5, explore everything. For some people, this is second nature, but stay curious. Fiddle with everything. The game does issue pop-up tutorials for certain objects you're supposed to play with, but not everything, and those tutorials are incredibly unhelpful. You'd be surprised at some of the ways the game rewards you in Mondstadt, picking carrots, lighting torches, shooting airborne slimes, gusting dandelions with anemo. They all sometimes lead to something. In Mondstadt in particular, the game will assume you have access to Traveler, Amber, Lisa, and Kaya, especially Amber, so you may need to bring them back onto the team for a moment to solve a puzzle. Alternatively, number 6, use map pins. When you open the map, if you click or tap an empty spot, the game will ask you to add a map pin. You have your choice of a few different icons, and you can even name them if you want. I usually just stick to a code, like I use the 4-leaf clover anytime I find a shrine in the depths. Those are locked until the game rewards you with a special key, so you'll want to keep track of where those are. Likewise, you might want to remember good ore spots, fishing nodes, where certain enemies spawn, or maybe just the location of a puzzle you skipped. Number 7, keep an eye on your minimap. This is another tip that's second nature to most gamers, but be on the lookout when the game gives you an icon on the map, usually accompanied by a small noise. You'll occasionally see exclamation points for quest markers, but more frequently, you'll run across 4-pointed stars. Those are indications of where you'll find an oculus, which are important collectibles. In particular, the Animoculi of Mondstadt and the Geoculi of Liyue will give you a permanent increase in stamina when you bring enough of them to a statue of 7, making this one of the most worthwhile ventures in your early exploration. Number 8, take advantage of the statue of the 7. Statues are great for a few reasons. First, they're teleport points, and they unlock the local map. When in a new area, you'll want to prioritize finding the statue. However, statues have a few other important uses. They are where you turn in your oculi. They allow your traveler to swap elements, provided you're in a new nation. But perhaps most importantly, they heal. Use the Statue's Blessing option to change the healing to 100%. I have no idea why it defaults to 50. And whenever you get near, your party members will be healed. And revived. That's kind of important. Without the statue, you'll probably use a lot of cooking items, which is a shame because cooking requires consumables and you legitimately do not need them. Number 9. Bring a healer, or at least some kind of defensive option, especially until you learn the enemy's movements. Initially, your only option here might be Noelle, but she has both a shield and technically can heal you if you learn how her skills work. Yeah, it's on a long cooldown, so you can't use it constantly, but leaning on that as a backup while you learn to dodge can be a huge help. If you have access to better healers like Jean, Bennett, or Chi-Chi, those can make your life easier too. Unfortunately, their healing almost always requires using their bursts, so don't grow too dependent on it. Number 10. Bring an archer, or at least be prepared to pull one out. There are times when being able to hit an enemy at range is helpful, like hilichurls on towers or fighting an Eye of the Storm. But mostly this is advice for when you have a puzzle or a challenge that requires it. The challenge pillars with the bullseye icons are always target challenges. It's for this reason that I usually recommend keeping Amber in your lineup until you genuinely have 4 characters you want to use, even if you keep her at level 1. Number 11. Experiment with different characters. Whenever you get a new character, it's probably smart to see what they have to offer. And while you could watch a guide or read the incomprehensible text in the talent portion of the character menu, it's probably easier to just fiddle with them. Just be aware that there might be some nuance to these characters you're overlooking. When I first started playing, I thought Beto, whose skill is a counterattack, was all about using that. Her elemental burst was really disappointing to me and didn't seem to do much, until I realized how it actually worked and that her whole character design was built around it. And number 12, do not level your whole account. One of the biggest mistakes new players can make is doing some pulls on the gacha, ending up with 7 or 8 characters, and then trying to keep them all functional so they can use whoever they want. Genshin Impact is resource driven, and that means you will run out of experience books if you try to do that. It's not a big deal if you spend everything you have at the start, because you'll get more eventually, but by the time you reach Adventure Rank 15 and can raise the level cap of your characters from 20 to 40, you're gonna need to kinda commit. I can't force you to stick to a smaller lineup, but I'm issuing the strongest recommendation possible that you leave some people on the bench. You can still use them at level 1, especially if you lend them one of the flowers that you've leveled, but don't invest in them. And number 13. Finally, superseding all of this is Rule 1 of Genshin Impact, which is play how you want to play. Remember, these are tips, not laws. The only actual rule is the one I just mentioned. So if you take nothing else from this video, at least commit that to heart. And I'll be back with some combat-focused tips tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.